So this summer we're looking at various heroes from the Bible, and we're sort of asking ourselves, what are some of the things that they are going to teach us about our faith? And so this afternoon I'm going to speak about Esther. Who's familiar with the story of Esther? Good. But if you're not familiar with it, I'm going to talk about the story a little bit. But the book of Esther tells a story, but it's unique in the Bible. And it's unique in the Bible because it's the only book that doesn't mention God at all. However, it's cleverly written because it reflects something Jesus once said to the Jewish scholar Nicodemus. Jesus said this: "The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear the sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going." Jesus was describing the Spirit of God, unseen but having an impact. And this is the truth about the book of Esther. God is unseen, but he's having an impact. So let me share the tale of Esther with you. Settle back, open up your sweets if you haven't already opened them. Take a good bite, and let's enjoy the story together. A tale rich in drama, danger, and divine timing. The story of Esther for such a time as this. Long ago, in the heart of the mighty Persian Empire, where kings ruled vast lands with lavish splendor, there lived a young Jewish woman whose courage would change the fate of her people. Her name was Esther. And like many of her people, she lived in exile, unable to return to her home country. Orphaned at a young age, she was raised in a bustling city of Susa in Persia, which is in the mountains of modern-day Iran. She was raised by her older cousin Mordecai, a wise man who taught her to walk with quiet strength. Now, the Persian king Xerxes, yes, him of 300 fame, if you've ever watched that movie, ruled over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. He was powerful, wealthy, and impulsive. One day, after throwing a royal feast that lasted 187 days, yes, you heard that right, a party that lasted over half a year, he demanded his queen Vashti appear before the drunken nobles to display her beauty. I'll let you use your imagination. When she refused, the king was humiliated. In a rash decision, he banished her. But the king soon regretted it. His advisors suggested a grand search for a new queen. Beautiful young women from all over the empire were brought to the palace for months of beauty treatments. Among them was Esther. Her identity as a Jew kept secret at Mordecai's wise urgings. Esther didn't ask for special treatment or special attention, but something about her grace and humility set her apart. She won favor with all who met her, including King Xerxes himself. He placed the royal crown on her head and made her queen. Meanwhile, outside the palace gates, Mordecai overheard a plot to assassinate the king. He told Esther, who passed the warning on to Xerxes. The conspirators were caught, and the event was quietly recorded in the royal diaries, seemingly forgotten. But trouble was brewing. Enter Haman, the king's highest official, consumed with arrogance and ambition. Haman demanded all bow before him, but Mordecai refused. He would bow to no man. Furious, Haman wasn't content to punish Mordecai alone. When he discovered Mordecai was a Jew, he devised a wicked plan to annihilate all the Jews across the empire. He rolled some dice, called Purim, to choose the date of their destruction, and then convinced King Xerxes to issue a decree sealing their fate. Panic swept through the Jewish community. Mourning, sackcloth, and ashes marked their despair. Mordecai sent word to Esther, "Do not think you will escape this. Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this." Esther was afraid. Going before the king uninvited could mean death, but after prayer and fasting she made her decision. "If I perish, I perish," the brave-hearted Esther said. Dressed in her royal robes, Esther entered the inner court. The king saw her and held out his golden scepter. "What is your request, my queen? Even up to half my kingdom it shall be granted." But Esther was wise. She didn't accuse Haman right there. Instead, she invited the king and Haman to a private banquet. During that banquet, they were both invited to a second banquet the following day. Drunk, Haman stumbled out of the first party and into Mordecai. Consumed with anger, he ordered a sharpened 10-foot stake to be erected, where he planned to impale Mordecai again. And here is where the story pivots. King Xerxes cannot sleep and has a scribe read his royal diaries. By an amazing coincidence, the scribe recalls the day Mordecai saved the king's life. And as Haman bustles into the king's presence, demanding Mordecai's death, before Haman can even utter a word, he is commanded to lead Mordecai around the city, honoring Mordecai for saving the king's life. Haman is fuming, but for him it gets much worse. At the second banquet the following day, with courage rising in her voice, Esther revealed the plot. "I and my people have been sold for destruction. If we had merely been sold as slaves, I would have remained quiet, but our lives are forfeit." The king was stunned. "Who is this man who dared do this?" Esther turned to Haman, this vile enemy. Xerxes, enraged, left the room in a storm. Haman, now pale with fear, begged Esther for his life, but the king returned to find him falling on her couch. Misunderstanding the scene, the king ordered Haman's execution. Ironically, Haman was impaled on the very stake he had prepared for Mordecai. Esther and Mordecai were given Haman's estate. Mordecai was elevated to a position of power, but the edict to destroy the Jews could not be reversed, only countered. So a new decree was sent out. The Jews could defend themselves, and when the appointed day came, they fought back and triumphed over their enemies. Mordecai established a yearly feast, Purim, to celebrate the deliverance, a time of joy, gifts, and remembrance. Purim named after the dice that decided the fate of their doom, and in memory of how God behind the scenes intervened and saved his people. And so through courage and wisdom, Esther becomes a queen who did not forget her people. Her bravery saved a nation. She may have seemed like an unlikely hero, but God had placed her in a palace, not by accident, but for such a time as this. It's a good story, isn't it? It's a good story. But the whole story is about lifting the curtain and realizing the unseen hand behind all the extraordinary turnarounds. It's important to realize that there is no great example of moral character here. There is drinking and sex and violence, and Mordecai and Esther did not honor God by their words nor by their deeds. They were eating and drinking food forbidden by God's law. The real hero of the story is God himself. When God seems absent, when his people are in exile, when they're unfaithful to his law, does that mean that God is done with his people? Has God abandoned his promises? And the book of Esther says no. The story of Esther invites us to see that God can and does work in the real mess and moral ambiguity of human history. There are no perfect people here. And there are no perfect people here. And God uses the faithfulness of even morally compromised people to accomplish his purposes. And so the book of Esther asks us to be willing to trust God's providence even when we can't see it working. This is the Waymaker story. For those of you who are familiar with the song, you'll know this line. Even if I don't see that you're working. You see, none of us is perfect. All of us come with our brokenness, and God is still at work. His grace is sufficient. As the book of Romans reminds us, Paul writes this, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. If you have put your trust in Jesus, you have been called by God. And he's working for your good. I don't know how much you know that. The story of Esther is to be read by you and me who have faith in an unseen God, so that we might have hope that no matter how bad things get, God is committed to those who love him, even though we may not always see that he's working. Amen? Amen.